So, of course, we are going to get started. And so I want to start off by asking you a question. Have you been in one of those situations that when you looked at the circumstances and when you looked at the situation, you said to yourself, oh my goodness, I have no idea how this is going to work out? And you know those situations that you find yourself in. I mean, you're in a pickle. You are in a bind. That maybe you've got a lot of financial strains that are put on you right now, and out of nowhere, you sort of have lost your job, or something that you were investing in, something that you were trying to build, something that you're trying to grow, unfortunately has completely fallen apart on you. Or you're in one of those situations where, you know what, you're trying to manage life, and then life has thrown something else on you. Somebody close to you has unfortunately gotten ill, or maybe perhaps you're having some situations that are going on in your personal finances, or even maybe perhaps one of your relationships is going through a significant challenge. And when you look at the situation, you keep asking yourself, oh my goodness, how am I going to get through this? Is everything going to work out? And so if you've ever asked yourself that question, I have the answer for you. And you say, well, what's the answer, Andy? Here's what I could tell you right now. Regardless of what your situation is right now, no matter what it is that you're going through, trust and believe that, guess what, eventually it will work out. Now, I know you don't want to hear that. As a matter of fact, I have a good friend of mine. His name is Mike. And no matter what's going on, I mean, no matter what the situation is, I can say, Mike, one of my rental properties caught on fire, Mike. I remember when one of my rental properties did catch on fire, and we had the conversation. And he said, don't worry, Andy, it'll work out. I said, Mike, listen, I'm in the middle of a lawsuit right now. You know what he said? He said, Andy, don't worry, it'll work out. I said, Mike, listen, man. Right now, I've got a family member, a relative. They're really sick right now. Things aren't really looking good. They said, listen, man, don't worry. It'll work out. And sometimes he says that, and let me just tell you, it gets on my nerves. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Do you not understand that I'm under a lot of stress right now? Do you not understand how difficult this thing is? And you're telling me that it's going to work out? But let me just tell you, even though sometimes I hate to hear him say it, let me just tell you something. He's absolutely right. One way or another, things always seem to work out. And so if you're a note taker, I want you to write this down. This is something that Tracy McMillan said. She's an author, and one of the things that she said is she said that everything works out in the end. And she says, if it hasn't worked out yet, then it's not the end. Write that down. Everything works out in the end. This situation that you're going through, this financial situation, everything works out in the end. This situation has not come to stay. It has come to pass. It will eventually work out. You will eventually get the job again. You will eventually recover this money. You will eventually be able to start investing again. You will eventually be able to re-enroll in school. Listen, everything works out in the end. And maybe right now you're going through a little difficult patch, a little difficulty right now in your relationship. Or maybe perhaps you have lost a relationship and you're feeling as if you can't go on. You're like, this is too difficult, Andy. You don't understand. This person meant so much to me. I can't believe this person is no longer in my life. And let me just tell you something. I know that it feels like you won't get over it, but trust and believe that everything works out in the end. Even this situation that you're going through, it will eventually work out. And if it hasn't worked out yet, then believe this, it is not the end. And some of you know I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary. So next month, my wife and I, we're going to be celebrating our 1-year anniversary. As a matter of fact, we are going to be taking a trip over to Dubai to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. And here's what a lot of people, a lot of you have had the opportunity, if you haven't already done so, some of you know that I actually proposed to my wife in a very creative way. I had a flash mob. It was a really, really awesome, powerful, I think that video now of me proposing to my wife, I think it has like over 10,000 views or something. If you want to see it, just put in Kaz and Andy surprise proposal into YouTube, and I'm pretty sure you'll find it come up. But you know what? Here's the amazing thing is most people sort of see that video and they're watching this like nice flash mob proposal, but they don't really know the story, the backdrop behind this amazing proposal that I was able to pull off. Because let me just tell you, around the time when I was thinking about proposing to my wife, I was in the middle of a very bizarre lawsuit. And the reason why I say bizarre lawsuit, I decided to invest in a company that was featured in several magazine publications, in which the CEO was featured in publications and so forth. And I sat in an actual investment pitch meeting, I guess you would call it, where they spoke to a group of investors and they told us about about how this company was growing by leaps and bounds, this amazing track record that this company had. And so myself and about 60% of the people who were sitting in the room at that time literally invested tens of thousands of dollars. Some people invested six figures, some people invested five figures, and some people even invested over $1 million, not necessarily in that room, but into that particular company. And let me tell you, I invested in the company, and after a while, I got my first pro forma and statement back, and I had a nice return on my investment. I was pretty happy with it. And so eventually I got my money back, including my investment, and everything seemed to be perfectly okay. And literally, I'll tell you, not too long after I got my money back, I turned on the television station. One of my buddies gives me a call. Andy, turn the television, turn it on CNN. I turned the television on CNN, and here it is. What's going down? The CEO of the company is being arrested by the FBI. The FBI has completely invaded the office, and this particular company is going down as one of the second biggest Ponzi schemes out of New York. And so many of you have heard of Bernie Madoff, and so this was another Ponzi scheme that was almost as big as the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, where literally millions of dollars, over $150 million, people were defrauded. You have major companies, major investors, and so forth that were defrauded. And so I'm in many ways thinking, like, I think I've made out pretty good. This guy's getting arrested, but thank goodness I've gotten my money back. But here's how it goes. Here's what happened. There's a special law, and here's how the law is written. It says for anybody who invested in the company who got their money back, that here's what they told you, that even though you got your money back, as soon as the FBI took over and the funds got taken over by a receiver, they wanted anybody who got their money back within 90 days to give the money back. Now, clarification for you. Not just the money that you actually profited, they want you to also give back your original investment and then get back at the end of the line, and hopefully you'll eventually get some money. So you can only imagine how I'm feeling at this moment. I'm like, wait a second here. I invested in a company, my own hardworking money. I made some money. And now they don't just want me to return the money that I made, but I've got to return my original investment, and I'm being sued. Are you kidding me right now? Oh my goodness. So you can only imagine I am completely stressed out. I'm making phone calls to different attorneys, and the average retainer, they want $10,000. And I mean, just to take up the case, and this is a federal case, I'm going to have to go to New York for this thing. And this thing has completely just gotten out of control. And let me just tell you, I wish I could tell you that lawsuit was something that just lasted for a week, or I wish I could tell you it was something that lasted for a month, but this lawsuit literally lasted for about 3 years. Now, if you fast forward, now I'm at the point now where, I'm not really hearing anything. I'm thinking things are working out, and I'm dating my wife, and I'm coming to the realization that, this is the woman that I want to marry. This is the woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with. So now I'm out ring shopping. I'm looking at different rings and so forth. And I'm speaking to a jeweler, and I've decided I'm going to go with a customized ring because this is a special lady, and I want to have a special ring on her finger. And right when I'm making the decision that I'm going to go propose to this woman and purchase this ring, I end up getting another notification, certified mail, that now that I'm being told that there is going to be a court date, that I'm going to have to show up to court. And after speaking to multiple attorneys, they're telling me, Andy, the likelihood is that you're literally going to have to give back tens of thousands of dollars. Now, I need you to understand something. I'm thinking about proposing to somebody, and I'm thinking about purchasing this ring, which of course afterwards is going to be followed by a wedding, which is obviously going to cost quite a bit of money. And at the same time, I'm in the middle of a lawsuit, and I'm not quite sure how things are going to work out. I'm being told that there's going to be a court date in New York that I've got to show up to. And now I'm contemplating, do I put my life on hold? Do I not propose to my wife right now because of this lawsuit that's about to take place? And let me just tell you, I was in one of those situations. I'm just asking myself, what in the world do I do? And so you can only imagine, I spent a lot of time on my knees, a lot of time in prayer, just trying to figure out, what do I do? Do I move forward? Do I purchase this ring? Do I put everything on hold? I don't know if I'm going to have to spend. I don't know how much money I'm going to end up having to spend, how much money I'm going to end up having to give back, and literally, and I don't know if I'm going to ever be able to recover any of this money. And so finally, the crazy thing is, I thought about this long and hard. I prayed about it and everything. And I finally decided to take an act of faith. I won't forget this. I went to the bank. I sat down in the parking lot of the bank. I thought long and hard about it. And finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to take an act of faith. And I went ahead and I told the banker, go ahead and initiate the wire. I sent the wire off to go ahead and start having this person start working on this ring. And then I get back home, and literally now I'm 1 week out where I'm scheduled to be in court in New York. And now I've booked my flight. My girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, decides that she wants to be supportive. She books a flight to join me in New York so we can appear in court. And I am already know from speaking to attorneys that obviously I'm still going to have to cut a check. Well, guess what happens? Next thing you know, a couple of days later, I just decide to make one more phone call. I pick up the phone. I make a phone call. I speak to this attorney that's out in New York. The attorney in New York says, oh, Mr. Henriquez, so sorry to hear about this case. But listen, I'm very familiar with this case. And yes, Mr. Henriquez, even though you've done nothing wrong, realize that you're not the only investor that has lost some money, but the way the law is written, you got your money back within 90 days of this particular company going down. And because of that, you have to give the money back. But I said, but you don't understand. Why can't I just give back what I made? No, Mr. Henriquez, you have to give it all back. But she said, listen, I'm familiar with this case. And as a matter of fact, I'm familiar with this law firm. And so here's what I could do. I'm going to go ahead and put in a phone call to see what I can do to maybe negotiate some type of a settlement for you. I said, really? Is that? She said, yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'll see what I can do for you. I said, well, what kind of retainer do you want? And she says, listen, you know what? I'm not even going to charge you anything. Let me just go ahead and put in a phone call and see what I can do. And so I said, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. There's not an attorney that wanted to touch this case without charging me $10,000. I'm scheduled to go to New York. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. And so I'm just sitting there and I'm waiting. And literally, I'm scheduled to go to court in New York on Friday. I get a phone call back from this attorney on Wednesday. And she says, listen, Mr. Henriquez, I called them over there. And listen, we are able to work out a settlement. Listen. This is how much money you thought you're going to pay tens of thousands of dollars. They understand what your situation is. You're going to work out a settlement, and here's what you're going to cut out. And I said, wow, really? I'm going to be able to settle for literally a fraction of what I thought I was going to pay. She said, absolutely. I said, well, do I still need to go to court? She says, you don't need to go to court anymore. I said, really? Well, I said, I booked a flight to New York. I hang up the phone with her. I pick up the phone. I get another phone call. Somebody calls me, says, hey, Mr. Henriquez. I say, yes. They said, listen, we found out that you were coming out to New York. We saw some kind of post about you coming out to New York. We want to know, can we have you come in and speak at this event? That this is an empowerment event, and we would love to feature you and have you as one of our speakers. I said, well, listen, I have a flight to New York anyway. I was supposed to go to court, but things have changed. And so, yeah, absolutely, I'll speak at this event. I'd love to come and speak at this event. Listen to this. Right after that, I get another phone call from one of my friends, and I said, listen, I was thinking about, proposing to Cassandra, and my ring comes in the mail early, and next thing you know, my friend says, hey, listen, I know a choreographer that has actually worked on Angela Bassett's movie that always has a lineup of people, and I know you were talking about doing a flash mob proposal, Andy. I think I could coordinate it so this thing can happen at this event. And so here's what you won't believe. That same trip that many people watched that video of me proposing to my wife in New York during a speaking engagement, that flight, that trip to New York was originally for me to go to court for a lawsuit in which I was going to fight to try to maintain my money from money that I invested in a company that was actually featured on the popular show American Greed not too long ago, right? And so people would never even believe that when you see that video and you're watching me propose to my wife and you're seeing this whole flash mob engagement, you would never think in a million years, and you would never even know the whole circumstances that were around this thing. And so I'm telling you, when I look at the circumstances and I think about how I was feeling when I was in the process of being sued, how I was feeling when this lawsuit was going for a process of 3 years, how I was feeling when I was contemplating proposing to my wife and at the same time having to deal with this lawsuit and wondering whether or not I was going to put my life on hold, When a moment I decide to act on faith and send the wire off for her ring, then right afterwards, this attorney appearing and being able to settle things. Then afterwards, getting called and told, hey, there's a speaking engagement that we want you to speak at. Then afterwards, being connected with a choreographer from one of Angela Bassett's movie who could coordinate a flash mob proposal. And I tell you, when you look at the circumstances, you say, no way. But it takes me back to what Tracy McMillan said. She said, listen, everything works out in the end. If it hasn't worked out yet, then it's not the end. I'm telling you, when I was in the middle of that situation, when I was in the middle of that lawsuit, when I was in the middle of contemplating what I was going to do, I had absolutely no idea that things were going to work out in the end. I had no idea that I was going to end up getting a speaking engagement that same weekend in New York. I had no idea that that attorney was going to be able to settle my lawsuit within days of me having to appear in court. I had absolutely no idea that I was going to be able to connect with this choreographer and actually coordinate a flash mob proposal in a matter of just a couple of days. Had no idea it was going to happen. But let me just tell you right now, you could be in a set of circumstances. You could be in a situation. And when you look at the situation, when you look at the circumstances, you're saying to yourself that there's absolutely no way this thing is going to work out. There's no way that this thing is going to work out in my favor. This is insane. How could this possibly work out, Andy? But here's what I need you to understand. And here's what I need you to realize. Here's what Tracy McMillan said. Listen, everything, including your situation, works out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out yet, then it's not the end. So I need you to continue to push forward. Listen, Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. Because listen, this thing that you're going through right now, it has not come to stay. It has come to pass. You're going to make it through it. Some things will begin to change. Some situations will begin to start working out in your favor, but you've got to take an act of faith and continue to push forward. You have to take an act of faith and not give up on your goals and your dreams and do that thing that you know that you've been called to do, because there's a special calling and there's a special appointed time for you for things to work out in your favor. And listen, do not judge your circumstances and don't judge the way things are looking right now, because if you do that, sometimes you'll be judging too soon. And so when you look at it, and you know what, I think back to my buddy and I tell you, he has gotten on my nerves many a day saying, Andy, listen, man, it'll work out. But listen, when I look back on my life and I look back at the situations, even the toughest situations, even when I did take a loss, but guess what? Somehow things worked out. As a matter of fact, somebody said, when you lose, and there are certain situations that you will incur a loss. Let me tell you, that lawsuit, I still incurred a loss. I still had to pay money that in many ways I didn't feel like I should have had to pay it. But in light of what I would have had to pay out, listen, it was pretty good, okay? But I still incurred a loss. But somebody said, when you incur a loss or when you experience a loss, don't lose the lesson. And so if you can take the lesson, if you can find a way to leverage the lesson, things will work out. You know, it also makes me think out, you know, I also have, one of my good buddies, he started a company with two other business partners. And so here they are, they started this company. It was him, these two other guys. They started off a technology hardware company. And things were booming for them. Things were actually going quite well. In their first year, you know, they had a multiple six-figure business. By the third year, they did over $1 million in sales. I mean, things were looking fantastic. And then, unfortunately, here's what happened. As many of you know, 9/11 happened. And then right after 9/11, as many of you know, the economy took a significant hit. And after the economy took a significant hit, here's what happened to my buddy. Both of his business partners that he thought that were going to be with him, you know, through you know, the tough times, and also they were surely with him during the good times. But as soon as things got a little tough, both of his business partners called a meeting with him, and they said, hey, listen, we want to call in a meeting. And both of his business partners said, listen, we no longer want to work this business. We are going off on our own, and we want no more part of this business. We have all this debt. We have creditors calling us. You know, the economy has changed. You know, we have lost many of our major accounts, and there's no way things are going to work out. And my buddy was sitting there in that situation. He's like, oh, my goodness, I can't believe this. You two are the guys who started this business with me. You guys, we're the ones who were supposed to grow through this. You guys were giving me high fives and cashing checks with me when things were going well. And now we're in a situation where things aren't going well, where unfortunately now we have debt. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of our customers. Unfortunately, things aren't working out. And both of you want to bail out? You wanted to bail out right now on me? And they said, absolutely. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to completely dissolve the company. And so my buddy he still believed in the company. He still believed in the vision. And so he didn't want to completely dissolve the company. And so he did something that was very, very difficult. And you said, well, Andy, what did he do? Well, what he decided to do was he decided to release both of his partners from all of the obligations and the debt that the company had. Now, I need you to understand this. Listen, all three of them actually started the business. All three of them at the beginning were all responsible for both the revenues that were incurred, but now they were all equally responsible for the debt that this company incurred. And now these guys want to leave, and he doesn't want to dissolve the company. So now he allowed them to walk away scot-free. He allowed them to go ahead and remove their ownership interest, but also to alleviate themselves of all the hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that the company had. And my buddy took on this debt himself. And let me tell you, things were difficult for him. I mean, he's sitting there and he said, Andy, man, let me just tell you, man, things were horrible, man. He said, I lost both my business partners. He said that we lost all of our major accounts. He said creditors were calling me. He said when things were booming, I bought a new house. And unfortunately, because financially things turned around, my house started going to foreclosure. He said that I was trying to call creditors and trying to, explain to them, how we could balance things out and how maybe they could put me on payment plans. My one major account that was left, I sold them a piece of hardware and they decided to actually return the hardware under our returnment policy. And I had to honor the return. And he said that was the string that actually broke the camel's back. He said, man, that was it. I was out. He said from that point on, man, I had to make the decision on whether or not I was going to feed myself, put gas in my car, or find a way to go ahead and pay my bills. He said, man, it was tough, man. He said for about a year and a half, I was just surviving on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. He said I had to decide on what bills I was going to allow to get cut off and what bills wouldn't get cut off. And when he was looking at his situation, he said, my goodness, there's no way that things are going to work out. But guess what? This is what happened. He began to restructure. And he started to get back out there again, and the economy started to shift and change a little bit. He started to change his little market strategy, and he started finding different ways to acquire new customers and new leads. He started to get out there and literally make phone calls every single day for a couple of hours to pick up new customers. He actually started putting out flyers and pamphlets on his own, going to major conferences and passing out flyers and networking and so forth. And then he said that slowly but surely he was able to start recovering. And so finally, he was able to start getting caught up on his payments to his creditors. And finally, the company started profiting where now he was able to start paying on a regular basis. And then next thing you know, he says about 3 years in, Andy, he says, now I've gotten the company back to not just over $1 million in sales, but now I've gotten the company over $2 million in sales. He says, Andy, when I look back at the situation, man, he says, I cannot believe that now this is a multi-million-dollar company and I am the sole owner of this company. And he says, Andy, when I look at the situation, when I was in the middle of that situation, when my business partners walked out on me, when I had the creditors that were calling me, when I didn't know how things were going to work out, I had no idea that things would eventually work out, that I myself would eventually become what? He said, I had no idea, man, that I would eventually become 100% owner of my company. And he said, listen, man, it reminds me of a quote that Marilyn Monroe said, and I want to share that with you. And here's what she said. She said, sometimes good things fall apart so that better things can fall together. And let me just tell you right now that sometimes you could be in the middle of a situation, and when you look at the circumstances and when you look at what you're going through and you're saying to yourself that I have no idea how this situation can possibly work out. But I want to remind you what Tracy McMillan said. She said that everything works out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out yet, then it's not the end. And so here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to look at one of your circumstances right now. That maybe you're looking at the circumstances and you're saying to yourself that, you know what, there's no way that I'm going to be able to work this thing out, Andy. There's no way I'm going to be able to recover from losing my job. There's no way that I'm going to be able to recover or take my business to the place that I want to after the significant loss that I've incurred. There's no way I'm going to be able to rebound after making, incurring this significant loss from this investment. There's no way that I'm going to be able to, pull my family back together. My family just seems to be ripped apart. Or there's no way that I'm going to rebound from what's going on with me right now, health-wise, or what's going on in my family. But listen, let me just tell you something right now. Don't judge the circumstances. Listen, because the circumstances will mislead you. The circumstances will make you believe that things will not work out. But here's what I need you to understand. Listen to this. Everything, including your situation, works out in the end. And listen to me, okay? If it hasn't worked out yet, then it's not the end. And so you got to be willing to keep pushing forward. You got to be willing to keep your eyes on the prize. You got to have some faith. If you're going through hell, you got to keep going. If you're in the middle of a setback, you got to understand the words of Willie Jolly when he said that a setback is a setup for a comeback. If you're experiencing some type of a breakdown, you got to remember the words of John C. Maxwell. He says that every single breakdown prepares you for a breakthrough, and understand that if it hasn't worked out yet, then it's not the end. And so don't be discouraged. Don't judge the circumstances. Listen, there's still some good stuff with you, okay? There's some things that's going to work out. And so don't get caught up. Just keep pushing forward. Just keep moving forward. And yes, I understand you're not necessarily going to know how it's going to work out. I had no idea how my situation was going to work out. My friend Nathaniel had no idea on how his situation was going to work out, but it worked out. And so you just got to have some faith. You've got to be willing to take that first step, even when you can't see the entire staircase, as Martin Luther King Jr. would say. And so what I want to remind you right now, and regardless of what your situation is or what you're going through, I just want to remind you the words of Tracy McMillan. She said that every single thing works out in the end. And that includes your situation. Everything works out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out yet, then it's not the end. So keep pushing forward, because I believe me when I tell you this, it will work out. All right. Well, this wouldn't be Andy Henriquez if I didn't end by telling you this. Show up for your lives, ladies and gentlemen, because if you don't, nobody else will. I'm so happy and so grateful that you've chosen to be part of the Show Up for Your Life motivational movement. And of course, I want to remind you, here's what I want to remind you of. First of all, I want you to go ahead and connect with me. And here's how you're going to do that. If you're wondering, how can you connect with me? I want you right now, open up a web browser, go to showupforyourlife.com if you haven't already done so. When you get there, you're going to see a banner where you can put in your name as well as your email address. Go ahead and put in your name and email address. It's going to allow me to send you an instant motivational message. But on top of that, it's going to allow me to continue to send you powerful videos and messages and content that I believe is going to help you to show up in your personal life and also to show up in your business. So make sure you do that right now. Go to showupforyourlife.com. Now, for those of you who want to join the Show Up for Your Life community, we also have a Show Up for Your Life private group. You're going to open up a separate web browser, type in showupgroup.com. Once again, you're going to type in showupgroup.com. Once you type in showupgroup.com, here's what you're going to do. You're going to find this private Facebook group, and when you go there, you can send us a request. We'd be more than happy to allow you to go ahead and join the group. And for those of you who watch in via the live stream and you're just saying, hey, Andy, I want to be able to, make some comments and some feedback. How do I do that via the live stream? Well, the way you're going to do that is you can go ahead and put your comments, your questions, and your feedback in the Show Up group. So just go ahead and open up a web browser, type in showupgroup.com. It's going to be a shortcut. It's going to direct you to our private group, and you'll be able to join us. Now, for those of you who would like to make sure that, that you can stay connected and also be able to potentially get some coaching, both myself and my wife that I talked about a little earlier in this message, we have a 6-month coaching program that is actually still open right now. And for those of you who would like to learn a little more about that 6-month coaching program, and maybe you've been trying to figure out how to make a move in your business and get started in your business, or maybe perhaps take your business to the next level, for those of you who are new in your business, you're just trying to get it to the next level, you want to make sure that you go to yourpowercouple.com. Once again, that is yourpowercouple.com. When you get there, you'll see a little quick application that you can fill out put in your information, and someone from our office will get in contact with you and tell you exactly what the requirements are, and maybe just share you and let you know what kind of value you receive by being part of the 6-month coaching program. And so like we always do, I'm going to open up the line so we can go ahead and get our comments and our feedback from those of you who are listening in via the conference call line. And also for those of you who are watching via live stream, I'm going to go ahead and head right on over